Have you ever said, my kid won't listen, or my kid tells lies, or my kid talks back? Good, that's normal. That's also the exact list that almost every parent would give to me when they walked in my martial arts school. I would ask them a couple questions when they came in. The first question was, how'd you find out about the school? The second question, and most important question, was, what are you hoping to accomplish from martial arts training? It always ended the same. They almost always said, my kid needs more discipline. So for 35 years, that's what I did. That was my job. I had to know everything about that word. I had to know what it meant, how it works, and how to transfer it to another person because I was expected to take a kid and build some discipline in them. Now the parents would ask for discipline and I would ask them, what is your kid doing? Why would you say something like that about your kid? And they would say, well, he doesn't listen. And I would say, well, that's a focus problem. They'd say, he tells lies all the time. And I would be like, that's an honesty problem. And they would say that my kid talks back. That would be a respect problem. Three completely different concepts that they would lump under one word, discipline. They keep using that word. I do not think it means what they think it means. So I'm going to tell you today what that word means, at least the one that I use to do my job every day, 6 days a week for 35 years. My name is Scott, by the way, and if you haven't already gathered, I'm a martial arts instructor. So let's study the word. Discipline comes from a Latin word that means to learn or be taught. I have asked so many people over the years from all walks of life if they can define discipline. And they'll give me examples of discipline or byproducts of discipline like self-control, or they'll give me a method of establishing discipline like structures, but nobody can give me any definitions. Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, nuh-uh, I know what discipline is. But check this out. It comes from a Latin word, discipulus, which means a pupil, a student, a follower. It's where the word disciple comes from. And then that moves into disciplina, which means instruction, instruction given, teaching, learning, knowledge, object of instruction, science. Discipline has to do with the process of learning. There's a teacher, which is an authority, there's a student, and there's an information exchange. The original meaning has nothing to do with punishment or pain. It just means to learn or be taught. So where did this concept of punishment or pain come from? The French. Here's the proof. A long time ago, religious men would whip themselves. They believed hurting the body trained the soul. Suffering was a way to learn. They even called the whip discipline. That's how pain and suffering got bolted onto a word that was only about learning. Now, don't get me wrong, a whip is one method for getting someone to learn something, especially when they don't want to learn that thing. Here's why the correct definition of discipline matters. Whatever discipline that you're building in your kid, you're building it so that you can hand it off to them one day, because one day you're not going to be there anymore. The discipline must transfer. That's why the definition is so important. We have a term for that. It's called self-discipline. If discipline meant pain and suffering, why would you want to hand that off to your kid? It doesn't make any sense. Think about it. Who chooses suffering? Life is hard enough as it is, right? Who wakes up in the morning and volunteers for pain? Nobody. If pain is your version of discipline, then discipline is dependent on you. And the day that you're not there anymore, the discipline isn't either. So if discipline means learning, then it'll transfer to another human being. And remember, I did this every day, sometimes 14 to 16 hours a day, 6 days a week for 35 years. The secret, well, my secret was getting them to want to, getting them curious about how awesome they could be. And I used to say that all the time in class. A kid who's curious will have enough drive to get better at things that they care about. And here's the part that matters most to parents. A kid who can discipline themselves stays safe even when you're not watching, even when you're not around. That's the real prize. You are raising, no, let me change that. You are training your kid to operate eventually on their own. You want them to regulate themselves. You want them to stay curious about how awesome they could be and explore that on purpose and safely. See, that's why the correct definition matters. When I opened my martial arts school when I was a young man, I was harsh. I mean, absolutely relentless. I thought I was teaching discipline. I thought the harder I went, the more discipline was being taught. Then I noticed my students, they weren't really learning to be more excellent. They were learning to avoid my wrath. Getting them to want to be excellent, that unlocks their true potential. But getting them to avoid my wrath keeps them locked inside my limitations through my regulations. What if their way is better? What if they're way more excellent than me, but I'm holding them back because I'm confusing control for discipline? That's kind of when it sunk in for me. You know, the meaning of discipline, to learn or be taught. I mean, what are they learning? Are they learning to be afraid? Are they learning to avoid my wrath? Are they learning to be excellent? Knowing the correct definition was important, but knowing why it was important made it beneficial to the student and my own kids and made it transferable. So take a look at yourself for a second. If you're leaning on your kid and calling it discipline, maybe you're doing what I did in the beginning. And I want you to know there are two kinds of discipline, and in my next video, I'm going to explain both of them to you. This is lesson number 2. If you haven't seen lesson number 1, I'm going to put it on the screen for you. Now, leave me a comment. Tell me what you think about this video. Like it, share it with somebody you think would think it's interesting. And thank you for watching.